So my question is regarding warranty and liability during closing.
Okay, so in terms of the warranty, if you take a look at the purchase contract, there's a video that we have done. It's an important topics. And in that, I go section by section, like line by line, and explain like all the different sections. So one of those sections will be warranties and guarantees. So this section basically goes through the different things that the seller is guaranteeing, right? So some of those things would be that the location of the building, for example, right, meets the city requirements, that there's no encroachments, that it meets the code, and then there's no material latent defects found. So that's the section. Basically, this is the information that the seller is guaranteeing when it comes to, actually, let me just grab the purchase contract here. I can tell you. So these are the things that the seller is guaranteeing. I just want to have a quick reference here. Okay, representation and warranties. So the seller represents and warrants to the buyer that the seller has a legal right to sell the property, right? So that they are the owner of the property, that the seller is not a non-resident. So basically what happens is if somebody is a non-resident of Canada, so let's say they live in France, right? And they're buying property here or selling property here, they have to pay income taxes on that income. And in this case, so this is why we have this term, and they're saying that they are confirming that they are actually a resident of Canada. If they're not, then we need to get a clearance certificate from them, which shows that all the taxes have been paid on the property they're selling. And if that clearance certificate is not provided, then the buyer is responsible for paying those income taxes. So that's very important in case the person is a non-resident. But in this case, the seller is confirming that they are a resident and no one else has a legal right to include it attached and unattached goods. So sometimes people will have stuff that's leased, right? So for example, a water heater may be leased, or sometimes somebody has purchased a fridge. There's payments on that, right? That let's say they purchased the fridge from Brick and they owe payments on that. So in those cases, the seller, basically everything that the seller is including with the property has to be encumbrance free. That means there can be no liens on it. There can be no money owing to anybody, right? So that's what they're saying, is that anything that is attached or unattached, so any kind of fridge, stove, if somebody has solar panels, right? So solar panels, sometimes that it will be problematic. Sometimes a water heater is leased. It's not actually owned by the person. So basically what the seller can do is either pay it out, or there has to be an agreement that the buyer is accepting the responsibility for it. So if it's included with the house, generally they want it encumbrance free. That means there's no money owing on it. And then also that the current use of the land and building complies with the municipal bylaws, and then location of the property, all the buildings and everything is in compliance with the city requirements, and everything meets the restrictive covenants. Restrictive covenants are basically, they have to do with the architectural details of the property. So in some subdivisions, there will be a homeowners association. And there will be their builders or developer actually has created some guidelines that all the houses have to follow. So this basically means that, and in those cases, when you pull the title, it will say restrictive covenant on the title. And so basically this particular point means that the person hasn't broken those rules, right? They're still following those guidelines as per the restrictive covenant. And then there's no known material latent defects, and then there's no notices on the property in terms of any, everything has been built with proper building permits and everything. So these are the things that are in the contract in regards to, this is the standard contract. Now, if somebody doesn't have an RPR, for example, then you would have to cross out the part where it says location of the building and improvements are basically following the municipal bylaws, because you don't know, because you have no RPR, right? So if seller doesn't have an RPR and they're providing title insurance, this section has to be crossed out. So anything so let's say the basement is built without proper permit, then you would have to address that, right? Either in a term, or you would have to cross out the section that says lack of permits, right? So you have to basically address these, because if you don't cross something out and the seller does not have that, then you're basically, the seller is in breach of the contract, and we don't want that happening. So this is why this section is very important.